Hello, I'm Rebecca Lewington. Welcome to our podcast. It says on our website, the Micron Ventures team identifies and directs Micron's investments in technology-first startups, creating value from new compute architectures and applied AI and machine learning solutions. That's a beautiful sentence, but somehow unhelpful. To help me unpack it, I've enlisted the help of Micron's venture capital directors, the very talented G. Radhakrishnan and Andrew Byrnes. G, Andrew, thanks very much for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Glad to be here, and we will try to be more clear.
Oh, good.
About what we do.
Okay, so let's try and be clear about who are you? What are your backgrounds and what are your current roles?
G?
Sure. Have a very mixed background. I have my master's in EE and an MBA from INSEAD. In terms of work experience, I've done everything from product management, product marketing, strategy, corporate development, institutional venture back in Germany, and now in corporate venture with Micron. And I worked at large companies like Dell, Corning, and now Micron, and really small startups with under 20 or 15 people. So,
you, Andrew?
Yeah, so Micron is my first company, over 35 people that I've ever worked with. Before this, I was working with a small venture fund in San Francisco that was doing cross-border investments between US and China. So got good visibility into unique ecosystems there. And before that, I launched and ran my own startup for about 6 years out of my grad program in material science. And so big sustainability nerd. It was a clean tech startup. And then before that, I had 80 different jobs doing 100 different things. And we don't have enough time to talk about that. But now working with G and both G and I joined in mid 2019 to help launch and ramp the AI fund at Micron Technologies.
Excellent.
Yeah, pretty exciting. It's the first time in Micron's 40 years where it's had a structured venture fund. And just excited to be a part of that.
So which brings me to my first question is, why does Micron need a ventures fund?
Sure, I can take this one, and I'm sure Andy can add as well. I think it's very helpful for us to have a venture fund because you can think of it as a future-looking, almost an innovation angle for Micron. There's a lot of technology innovation that happens within Micron, but they tend to be very core to what we're doing and maybe extensions or slightly adjacent. But with the AI fund, we are able to look at literally what's around the corner, right? So a lot of emphasis these days is around, can compute keep up with all the AI workloads? But then in reality, you realize that the way our current compute architecture is set up, it's not really compute that's a bottleneck. It's actually the memory bandwidth, right? The amount of frequency with which data is being fetched from memory and storage systems, that can actually be a big bottleneck. So understanding what kind of workloads are in play for AI and understanding which workloads are having traction essentially gives us a view into the future of what's coming down the pike, and also potentially how that might impact our compute architecture and how Micron may have a role to play in this kind of new world. So I'll stop there. Andy, I'm sure you can add to it.
Yeah, I have a more colorful way of looking at it. So about a year ago, we wrote this blog piece for the fund called "Disruption Happens," and part of one of the things that we said in that blog piece was, Micron is this great big company, 40 years old. We're called a memory giant. One of the values of having a venture capital fund is when disruptions does happen, if we can position Micron's face in front of that disruption well enough, it'll punch us enough to pay attention. And I think the timing of that blog piece was fortuitous because it was the beginning of COVID when that came out. And now it's like the world is totally different now than it was a year ago. That's happening continuously with startups, right? And to me, that's like the exciting thing about engaging with startups and being a part of Micron Ventures. It's really just being a part of that like continuous disruption, destruction, and like rebuilding and innovation that we're seeing now on like a global scale. That's what G and I do every day.
It's fascinating.
all the time.
The idea that COVID has put the world into startup mode is a fascinating idea.
Yeah.
How do you choose who to invest in and what to invest in?
So with Micron Ventures, we have very focused like fund theses. We're the AI fund, so artificial intelligence drives us. And a big part of that is because a lot of Micron's products, like we're housing the memory, we're housing the data that all these algorithms are being built on and processing. And so that's an exciting place to be as a semiconductor manufacturer. We invest in spaces that we care about, healthcare, ag tech, manufacturing, mobility, and also it's the core underlying tech that's running machine learning and artificial intelligence workloads. And then I'll let G talk a little bit about like the type of founders that we look for, because I think that's a big part about what differentiates us as a fund.
So as I think in the starting, you talked about that line about tech first, technology first, right? So that's the aspect that Andy just talked about, the technology first piece, right? As an AI fund, we are technology focused. We are looking at technology that can disrupt any of the segments, the core segments that we are looking at. For founders, we are looking at founders who are really innovative, who are resilient, who are comfortable with change, like COVID. I mean, most of our founders, to them, this is just part and parcel of being a startup founder, right? I mean, COVID impacted everyone, but as a startup founder, they see things happen that disrupts them on a daily basis, and they know how to recover. That's kind of part of their sort of how they're built, how they look at the world. And so it's just another roadblock for them. It is not the biggest roadblock. It's just yet another roadblock. So people who are open to listening, people who are trying to build the next big thing, and have a very strong vision, but at the same time are able to react to market feedback and sort of listen to others and make the right choices at the right time. So those are some of the key things that we look for when we diligence our, startups. We talk to the founders, we talk to the team, just to get a sense of how they work together, how do they react to sort of adverse situations, and how do they come out of it, essentially.
Right. So the right technology and the right people.
Exactly.
Now, I gather there's also something of a focus on founders from underrepresented groups. Can you tell me a bit about that? Why that?
Sure. I'll jump in and I'll give kind of my initial perspective, which, I think as a female, I've always been drawn towards female founders and sort of technology that has an impact. The way I think about it is, the world is made of, 50% women, 50% male. A lot of the technology today, decisions that are being made are much more catered towards sort of the technology-oriented Silicon Valley type investments that don't necessarily affect the masses. And this includes women, this includes underrepresented cultures and people, right? So they have unique set of issues, especially during COVID. We hear about, how certain segments of the population are more impacted, right, during times like this. But this happens on an ongoing basis. And the solution to that is actually a huge economic value proposition. So we believe that funding founders who have that kind of background, who understand that background and can cater to the needs of that background, actually create a world that's more equal, and also create sort of, rising water lift all boats kind of thing. So you are, by doing that in net, you're actually improving the holistic value of the entire ecosystem, right? And not just catering to one small segment of the market. And so we've actively made an effort to solicit sort of founders of varying backgrounds, gender, ethnicity, you name it, right? And the idea being they would have a different network that Andy and I may not have access to, right? They may have a different vision that we may not have even perceived or even thought about. So being connected to founders like that, being connected to people, allows us to contribute broadly, and as a result, also drive economic value for Micron and the community at large.
Excellent answer. Yeah, I mean, I've read a lot about there being an issue with bias in AI. Or if AI isn't done right, it's not a force for good, it's a force for bad. So is there something in there that's important? I mean, you've just said there's something important there, but could you say a bit more about that?
Absolutely. I'll say a few things, and then I'm sure Andy can add to it too. So, of late, I've been looking a lot more into the healthcare side, right? So things about when you're doing AI and machine learning, especially the current forms of machine learning algorithms that are there, rely a lot on training data sets. So if your training data set tends to be skewed towards a certain population, your outcome may be most optimized for that population and not necessarily the broader population. We know there are certain health conditions that women are more prone to. There are certain health conditions that Asians are more prone to. Certain health conditions that African Americans are more prone to. So, but how do you understand that, right? That means you need to have, when you're doing clinical trials, you need to make sure that your data has that variety and breadth, right? So that's an example on the healthcare side. Also, in terms of just facial recognition, just biases in terms of natural language processing and all of that. I'll give you a completely unrelated example that has nothing to do with, people. So there's this example of how a neural network was fed a lot of images of dogs and wolves. So they had a picture finally of a dog in the background of snow. So it put 2 and 2 together and came up with 5. It just said it's a wolf because it had not seen a picture of a dog with snow in the background, right? So it comes down to how its limitations are, right? It's based on kind of what it's fed. And if you're not feeding it complete data sets, or not even complete, but a broader variety or breadth or diversity of use cases, then it's kind of output is flawed. To some extent, garbage in, garbage out. It's garbage out mostly because of the limited data set in terms of the breadth that's used to train, right? So even right from there, you have various aspects where it plays a role.
Interesting. Andrew, you want to add anything to that? You can say
no.
The perfect answer. Well done.
No.
So let me move on to a question that I know Andrew's waiting for me to ask him. I was amazed to find out that there's so much venture money available that startups actually interview the venture capitalist to say, why should we take your money? Andrew, why should people take our money?
Because we're amazing at our jobs. Well, no, right. So that's I say that tongue in cheek. It's also real. I like to say, like, we do have a very high performing team, and we're a little bit different from most corporate venture funds, in kind of our ability to manage ourselves as a more like institutional VC. And I say that it's like we can get more involved with our startups, and we do get more involved with the startups that we work with than other corporate venture capital funds. And I think that gives us like a pretty unique advantage with a lot of our peers in the corporate venture universe. This business is a lot of personal effort and getting in there and working through the hard stuff with the founders that we collaborate with. And I think our team is good at it, in large part because of the way we're structured in the from the top down inside of Micron. Like our executive leadership really like pushing and encouraging entrepreneurial mindsets, and not being afraid to go in and like work on solving hard problems. I think that's one thing that sets us apart. When you're talking about deep tech and things that require a really heavy lift on engineering or physics, Micron is in the elite organizations of the world of having that like massive engineering and technical resource to put to play with some of the startups that we work with, and that's one of the big reasons why I joined Micron Ventures, was being able to tap into that resource and channel it to startups building kind of like wackier, more far out stuff. Like for example, we have one company in our portfolio that works in the robotic space. and we do collaborate with them on exploring new robotic workloads, and how to optimize Micron technology for that. And I think that's a value add, where both sides are learning simultaneously, that traditional venture funds can't offer. And so that's why, like, I do think, and also Micron being positioned the way it is, as a fast growing company ourselves, driven by artificial intelligence and this emerging of like a data centered economy. Again, our technology is pretty foundational to the growth of that industry. And Micron's a good industrial partner that works across different verticals, that can be value add for the startups that we work with.
Well, you've sold me. Anything to add, G?
No, Andy's absolutely spot on, right? So there's various elements to what we bring to the table. The fact that actually both Andy and I have startup experience also means that we can relate to a lot of what startup, is more critical at that point in their stage of evolution. And even for software companies that may say, hey, we are a software company, what's the need to work with somebody like Micron? I think we've given or delivered value in terms of helping them optimize their software for the underlying hardware, right? We are definitely semiconductor and hardware experts. We understand how things work. We've invested in a company called Iterative Scopes. They came to us and they're primarily a software company, but they do have an edge box that would go into like a GI's office, a gastroenterologist's office. And they said, hey, we're trying to do real-time edge analytics, right? How do we optimize our hardware? And we were able to pull the right people into a room and help them, talk about some of the stuff. And so that's kind of the expertise that it's hard to come by. Who do you reach out to, right? In fact, that was one of the reasons that they said we want to have someone like Micron on our cap table, right? So we can bring expertise in multiple areas. One such example is, just what I shared, the technical strength and the hardware expertise that we can bring to bear. And for companies that we are also looking at, we are a huge, large Fortune 500 company. And if they're targeting, we could be a potential customer, we could be a potential buyer of their solution. So there are lots of other value add besides just helping them, fundamentally as well. So.
Right. Yes, I gather we have a couple of joint proof of concepts in progress.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Could you tell me something about that?
No.
Unfortunately not. But yes, we do have multiple POCs with our portfolio companies.
Right. So we can bring money, expertise, potentially we can be a customer, we can be a supplier, we can put them in touch with other venture capitalists to help build the network. We're the one-stop shop. I mean, who wouldn't?
We try to be, yes.
We try to be. That's right. But again, like I'd say, it's from the top down that like our team has like a lot of autonomy to operate, which I think is like a very special thing, and one of the reasons why we're able to grow and build what we're building relatively quickly. And it's an exciting place to be, I think.
That's an important point, I think. Yeah.
Not to belabor it, but to Andy's point about the top down, we have put in place structures such that we can move really fast on a deal. So one of the investments that we did from our first meeting to money being wired, that happened in 5 weeks. I also know that not a lot of institutional investors can move that fast.
Yep.
So that's something even the startup was quite impressed by, that we as a corporate was able to, and that is in large part thanks to the processes that we have in place that enables us to say we can meet or beat even institutional investors in terms of timeline and how fast we can move.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
So I've got to bring this up. G, your peers recently voted you one of the top 50 rising stars in the venture capital world. Andrew, what did she do to deserve that?
What did G do to deserve that award? I mean, if you've ever worked with G, I think I'd put her in the top 10 of corporate venture capitalists that I've worked with.
What have there been 12 of those, or what?
I don't know. Like I think G knows her stuff, like backwards and forwards. She knows the industry backwards and forwards. She has that startup experience, so she knows how to like work with founders, who can, and she can help troubleshoot and get to the solution as fast as you can. Like that's a very rare skill set to have. I don't know how many people in the world have that skill set. And just like seeing her in action, like since we joined up together, it's been an awesome experience working with G. She's world class. Again, I would have voted her number one, but I'm biased.
Andy's been really, great to work with as well, because as you may have seen from this interview, he doesn't hold back, which is really helpful when you're trying to diligence a startup. Because interestingly enough, when you're looking at a company, the more you look, sometimes two things can happen. The more you look, the more you become disenchanted with it. You realize, you see all the holes. Or on the flip side, the more you look, the more enchanted you may become with the deal. Andy's been very helpful in, keeping me grounded, asking all the tough questions. So kind of my sounding board. And I know I'll get the unfiltered, unvarnished sort of feedback from him, which is very helpful, right? Because you want to know that you're making the best possible investment. And it's helpful to have that kind of sounding board and feedback. And he's constantly pushing the envelope in multiple ways and sort of pushing my boundaries of how I think.
That's right. We're good at pushing each other's buttons. But that's so important with small teams working really well together. You have to be able to push each other like to the extremes to be able to find where your limits are. And that's what I like working with G with. We keep, and our team as a whole, like we operate like really closely on short iteration cycles.
Excellent.
Pretty hard to replicate.
All right. Well, so just to wrap up, any last thoughts, Andrew?
Yeah, right. So I guess I'd say to the founders out there who see this, like the things that our team offers, other than like speed, getting into the fight with startup founders to make startups successful. It's going to be like honesty and integrity. Like those are the things that our team really stand for, and that we hold ourselves to like every day. And in venture capital and startups, everything is on a scale of honesty and integrity and not. And I do like to say like our team, like we hold ourselves to very high standards, and just being excellent at all times, helping people build amazing companies. Like that's the thing that turns us on the most.
And that's a much better slogan, by the way. Being amazing at all times and producing amazing companies. So if you will change the website.
Okay, great. Then that's what we help startups become. Excellent.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're a startup founder building something really cool, you should seriously consider Micron Ventures. Come talk to us. You can reach us on Micron Ventures website. You can reach us on LinkedIn. We are here to talk, and we are here to be friends and work with you to build the next great company. So
excellent. Well, thank you both very, very much. This has been fascinating and entertaining, a combination I don't get too often. So thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca.
There. You're welcome.